Hello and welcome to the big picture. A Supreme Court order which had found a provision in the Representation of People's Act that protected convicted MPs, MLAs and MLCs from losing their seats as ultra vires of the Constitution has been overcome with the issuing of an ordinance. The ordinance which ensures that the elected representatives don't lose their seat has become controversial, with BJP opposing it and dubbing it as unconstitutional. The ordinance, which was approved by the Union Cabinet yesterday, is before the President for approval. The BJP has appealed to the President not to sign it. Incidentally, when the government had called an all-party meeting during the monsoon session of the Parliament, all parties except the Biju Janata Dal had backed the move to bring an amendment to the Representation of People's Act to overcome the Apex Court order. However, the bill could not be passed during the monsoon session, because of which the ordinance has been issued. Today we will look at how far the issuing of the ordinance is justified and whether it stands the scrutiny of law and what are its implications. To discuss this, I have with me Soli, Sorabjee, former Attorney General of India, PC Chacko, Congress spokesperson and an MP, Nalin, Kohli, BJP spokesperson, PDT Achary, former Secretary General of Lok Sabha, and Vinod Sharma, political editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Nalin, let me come to you first. When the all-party meeting was held during the monsoon session, your party was also agreeable to this kind of an amendment being brought, so that this can be the Supreme Court's order could be overcome. But now your party seems to have taken a different stand. How do you justify that?
No, I think it's quite easily justifiable, Girish, because number one is, at an all-party meeting, when the discussion was there, you must understand it's about bringing about a change in the law.
Right.
And for that, it has to be done by the Parliament. And simultaneously, this issue is pending before the Standing Committee. Just because there is a discussion in the all-party meeting does not mean the government has a carte blanche, or it means that the BJP is going to back the government to bypass Parliament and in urgency bring about an ordinance when the winter session is not so far away and when the matter has already been referred to the Standing Committee. So I think there are two parts to it. In terms of bringing about amendment, you need safeguards, but you also need to look simultaneously at the issue of tainted politicians. You need to look at the wider issue of transparency and criminalization of politics. These are questions that the appropriate forum would be Parliament, and when it's referred to the Standing Committee, a specific proposal comes before Parliament then. But to bring an ordinance in a tearing hurry, which probably...
Nalin,
yes.
do you agree that in the all-party meeting, your party had agreed to bring about this kind of an amendment?
Well, I think what you are trying to do is, in a very narrow perspective, Girish, trying to see whether, there is a dichotomy between what the BJP has said earlier or now. There is no dichotomy. I do not look at it at the way you're saying it, nor does my party. The question is very focused. The question is, if you're talking on the ordinance, we are absolutely against it. Our leadership has specifically said, we do not believe that the government should have brought an ordinance. There was no requirement to do so when Parliament, it was decided that it would happen in Parliament. There is no reason to do so when the matter has been referred to the Standing Committee. And certainly we have opposed it and we are opposing it.
Okay.
So that's the larger issue. You must also look at perspective that the BJP, one sentence, I will finish then. The larger question is also, do not forget in 2009, as part of our election campaign, Advaniji had raised the issue of criminalization of politics. So these issues, how the government has gone about it is something we are opposing.
Okay, let me get Chacko. I think there is some problem with the picture, so we are getting him on the phone line. Chacko, can you hear me?
Yes.
Chacko, now the question is that the BJP says that they were they are opposing the ordinance. There was no need for an ordinance. When the bill is before a standing committee, for you to bring about an ordinance is not acceptable. What do you have to say to this? Why this hurry in bringing about an ordinance?
No, there is absolutely no hurry. Whether it is needed, whether it is necessary, whether it is to be introduced now as an ordinance, is a matter to be decided by the government. I do not think this change of mind of the BJP. BJP was willing to support this when the bill was there in Parliament during the last session. Because of certain other reasons, they could not pass that bill in Parliament. Bill is already before Rajya Sabha. Once it is passed from there, it would have come to the Lok Sabha also. We wanted that bill to be passed after due discussion in both houses of the Parliament. That we could not do. So that is the very same reason that we are bringing it out as an ordinance. And any argument advanced by anybody or accepted by any court that the rule-making power is not in the Parliament, how can we accept that? I don't know what the BJP mean by opposing it. And it is the responsibility of the government to bring this legislation. We have done that.
No, but the BJP is also now talking about the larger issue, the issue of criminalization of politics, the need to, clean up politics and things like that. So, and they say that since the bill is before the standing committee, so where was the hurry to bring it? Let the standing committee come out with its report, and then you could have brought the bill before the Parliament.
See, after this Supreme Court decision, there is a new situation arose in the country.
Right.
And can a government keep mum on that? There is a new situation after the ruling from the Supreme Court. And it is the duty of the government to rectify that situation. And we feel that there is a serious situation arose because there is no appeal provision. Any decision by any court, there is an appeal provision. And without an appeal, and 30 days time is given, 90 days, one can go for appeal. If there is a stay and if there is an appeal admitted, then he can continue.
Mr. Chacko, Mr. Chacko, I accept all that. But I'm sorry to intervene. I accept all that. But the question is this a problem of only the ruling party or the government? This is a problem which encompasses all the political parties in the country. So why couldn't you wait? Why couldn't you work out a consensus before coming out with an ordinance? That is the question which is being asked.
No, if people are taking a decision and then going back on the decision, how can we have it? There was a consensus. I think that, the BJP member is forgetting that conveniently. The BJP was willing to support the government and they were for it. And of late, they changed their mind. How do we make the consensus? We had discussed with BJP, we had discussed with all the parties, all of them agreed and we wanted to pass the bill.
Right.
We could not.
I will like to answer that.
Now, to rectify that, the government has brought the ordinance. So the BJP has changed their mind.
So, Nalin,
yes, I have heard Mr. Chacko very clearly.
You have changed your mind.
There is no duplicity as Mr. Chacko would like the world to believe. That can be a Congress defense to the question that they've gone ahead and passed an ordinance. That does not need to do. The Congress party should understand very clearly that as far as running parliament is there, this time in the session, they can't pass the blame anywhere else but at their own doorstep because numerous days were lost because of protests by the ruling party Congress MPs from Andhra Pradesh on the Telangana issue. So if there was a shortage of time, that is not an issue. Second is about consensus. The BJP has also backed. Mr. Chacko should remember, he's after all a minister and he's a member of parliament.
We have
backed many things. I'm sorry, he's not a minister, he's a chairman of the JPC.
Yes.
The point being that BJP has helped the government also and along many bills that have been passed in this very session.
No, that is all right.
So I think when consensus can be built, it is a participative process. Just because the government decides to bypass parliament in a tearing hassid to prevent probably impeachment on a ruling member of the party.
Nalin, 1 second.
Thrown at the BJP's doorstep.
Nalin, 1 second. So your essential opposition is because it's being brought as an ordinance. Anyway, I'll come back to you. Let me go to Vinod Sharma. Vinod, you think that the government could have waited for the winter session to come before bringing in this bill and not to have hurried with this ordinance?
Well, you see, Girish, I have a altogether different take on this. Nalin, what Nalin is saying can be justified. if I want to support his argument, and what Mr. Chacko is saying can be justified if I choose to side with him. But I think the middle ground lies somewhere in between, and that is that the promulgation of an ordinance is, in terms of popular perception, not good for the political class.
Right.
It is not good because there was a judgment recently against a sitting Raj Sabha member of the Congress party.
Right.
And also there is an impending judgment against perhaps on the case relating to the fodder scam, in which Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, who is the supporter from outside of the UPA, is one of the prime accused.
And there
Now,
may be many other cases which are pending.
there are many other cases.
Yes.
Now, this is where the problem of perception arises for the UPA. And I quite see the politics that the BJP is wanting to play, that on this juncture, despite being in support of the legislation, regardless of Mr. Advani's pronouncements to fight corruption in politics.
Criminalization.
Yes, it is. They want to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds, and you can't really quarrel with them on that, because any opposition party, when it paints the ruling party in a corner, it would like to capitalize on it, especially when it is election time. But my point is that the promulgation of this ordinance is, in terms of propriety, not an acceptable thing also. Because if a matter is pending before the Parliament, then I think it should be disposed of by Parliament rather than through the ordinance route. There is nothing unconstitutional about
Absolutely.
it.
It's a
But
matter-
there is a question of propriety here,
Right.
which the Congress must consider, because it is damaging the image of the UPA as a party that is, as a coalition that is seeking to insulate people under a cloud from the processes of law.
Okay, let me go to, I think we have Soli Sorabjee on the phone line. Again, there is a problem with the video there. Mr. Sorabjee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Mr. Sorabjee, the question to you is that the leader of the opposition of the Lok Sabha has made a statement through a tweet saying that this ordinance is unconstitutional. Is it unconstitutional to bring about an ordinance at this point in time?
No, just let us understand. I heard the previous panelist say some matter of propriety.
Right.
But it's only not a question of propriety, it's a matter of legality. The condition precedent under the Constitution
Yes.
to promulgate an ordinance is that circumstances exist which make it necessary to take immediate action.
Right.
In other words, necessity to take immediate action. And the immediate action must be in the interest of the nation.
Right.
Not to save some politician or political leaders from the consequences of Supreme Court judgment. So if this condition precedent is not satisfied, the ordinance is subject to serious constitutional challenge. And mind you, are we going to gradually go the ordinance route? Are we going to introduce that? Bypass Parliament? Overcome the Supreme Court judgment and through the ordinance route? What's the tearing hurry? Why can't it wait? It's not like something, a disaster has taken place, you have to immediately acquire land and you haven't got the power.
So,
you
Mr. Sorabjee,
create an ordinance.
Sorry, Mr. Sorabjee, so you feel that it could be unconstitutional?
Yes, definitely. For the simple reason that the condition precedent for issue of an ordinance is that circumstances exist that make it necessary to take immediate action.
The circumstances, Mr. Sorabjee, what about a consensus which was apparently worked out in an all-party meeting where all the parties except one party, that is the Biju Janata Dal, had agreed to this kind of an amendment?
Look, constitutionality doesn't depend on what political parties arrive at an arrangement.
Okay.
They arrive at an arrangement for their own reasons.
Okay.
You have to go by the provision of the Constitution. Unless there is necessity to take immediate action, you can't take recourse to ordinance. It will set a bad precedent. You gradually start to bypassing Parliament.
The argument, Mr. Sorabjee, is that there are elections to 5 states coming up next month, in less than 2 months, and then before those elections, the Parliament may not meet, and that is why this is necessary, because it can have a overall effect not just on these elections but also on states where the majorities are thin and governments can fall because of, if one or two members are convicted for something.
Is that national interest? And this is all hypothetical. Parliament may not take place. What about the standing committee? No, we must go by principles. We can't play with them.
Okay.
Don't play hide and seek with constitutional principle for the sake of expediency. Mind you, the words of the Constitution are, it is necessary, not it is expedient or it is desirable. And necessity can't be to save some political leaders, some politicians from suffering the effects of the Supreme Court judgment.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Sorabjee. Mr. Achary, where do you stand on this? You think that the Parliament, they should have waited till it comes before the Parliament when an issue is before the standing committee? You think this was the right thing to do?
Well, that of course is for the parliamentarians to decide. But what I would like to say is that technically or constitutionally, there is nothing wrong in the President promulgating an ordinance.
Absolutely.
And when he should promulgate the ordinance, of course, the Constitution clearly says when the houses are not in session and when the government and the President thinks that circumstances have arisen under which immediate legislation is required, then the President will promulgate an ordinance. It is basically the decision of the President, subjective decision of the President. Whether it was proper on this occasion when the bill was under consideration before a parliamentary committee is a matter on which there can be different opinions.
Okay.
But I must say that on a number of occasions when a bill was before the standing committee, on a number of occasions ordinances were promulgated by the President. So if you look at the precedents, we can say that technically, that is why I said technically, there is nothing wrong in an ordinance being promulgated on this issue or any issue.
Mr. Sorabjee's argument that it has to be national interest. Who decides that?
Well, that is why I said
That can only be decided when it goes to the court.
It actually is decided by the President. The Constitution empowers the President to take a decision.
Right.
And when the President takes a decision, it is supposed to be in the national interest.
May I come in?
Yes, Mr. Sorabjee.
President takes a decision on the advice of the Council of Ministers.
That is
Right.
understood.
This is not the subjective satisfaction of the President.
So you think
And
that
the words of the Constitution, it's necessary. Why don't people address that? Necessary to take immediate action.
So you
What's
think-
the necessity?
So you think that the President has no discretion on the matter now that it is pending before him? The President will have no discretion to use his own mind to
No.
apply his own mind whether he should sign the ordinance or not?
No, he may think that there's serious doubts about it. He may send it back. Under our constitutional scheme, the President has to act on the aid and advice of the Ministry, and the Ministry wants the ordinance to be promulgated. The President can't overrule it, except he may send it back if there's serious doubt. But otherwise, he has to go on ministerial advice.
Okay. Mr. Chacko, coming back to you, the question now is, how was it in national interest and how immediate and necessary was this? That is the legal question which is now being, which is now before you.
Very eminent legal luminary, Mr. Soli Sorabjee has made an argument that it is unconstitutional.
Yes.
I am
He said
not
it's
able to
illegal.
understand.
He said
but,
it's illegal
he's-
also.
He's an outstanding person. I do not think that it is unconstitutional, number one. But this is not, I am not an authority to say that. But at the same time, it is the responsibility of the government in power to rectify a situation which was generated out of a court judgment. Here the Representation of the People Act, which was questioned in the court, and there was a decision, a ruling by the court, which developed a situation which was unprecedented. Elections are there in 5 states. Not only that, there is an urgency. Who is to look at, decide the national interest? It is the government in power. Of course, government cannot take one-sided decisions. We had discussion with the national political parties. We had discussion at the all-party meeting. We almost arrived at a consensus also. And the government is convinced that we are taking in the national interest. So ordinance is not what we prefer. we prefer the other route, that discussion in Parliament. When it become difficult, Mr. Kohli was saying that we should go for. We are always for putting discussion and passing in Parliament. The people who obstruct the functioning of the Parliament is saying that why you go for ordinance.
Mr. Chacko,
and we could have passed it, and we want to pass it in Parliament.
I'll come to you, Nalin.
Yes.
But Mr. Chacko, the question is, as Vinod Sharma was pointing out, this is a very critical and also a very sensitive issue. Here is a situation in the country now, as it is. There are a lot of things being said about, how these kind of people are protected by the political class and things like that. And in your own interest, in the interest of the UPA, do you think that this would go down well with the people purely in political terms?
No, this is simply a coincidence. Some judgment is awaited coming in the next week or after 10 days, and now the ordinance has come because this bill was before the Parliament even before the winter session, this monsoon session began. So that means this bill was brought before the Parliament to discuss and pass. It was not with an intention to save somebody. But now, after the session is over, when the government took a decision, it so happened that it may be a coincidence. Not that we want to protect any criminals or we want to save anybody. These are all interpretations.
So you're not
These
really...
are all political interpretations.
So you're not really worried about the outcome and what kind of an impact it will have on your party and the government. Okay, we will leave it at that. Let me go to Nalin Kohli.
We will have the public support.
We will have the public. Okay, Nalin Kohli. You can respond to what
I will.
Chacko said, but no, I have a question. If you seem to be opposing this because you don't think that ordinances should be passed, and they could have waited till the Parliament, till the winter session of Parliament. But the fact of the matter is that, as Mr. Achary in the studio pointed out, this is not the first time ordinances are being passed. Ordinances are always passed. I have some papers with me which refers to the winter session of 2003 when the NDA government was in power, and similar situation had arisen when there was when 6 ordinances were passed between the monsoon session and the winter session, and 7 ordinances were passed between the budget session and the monsoon session in 2003 by your government. So this is not something new. How can you oppose it on the basis that you can't have this ordinance?
Okay, I hope I'll be able to answer this. First of all, I really cannot question an eminent legal luminary as what Soli Sorabjee has just said. So if we go by that, and Mr. Acharya may have his also contrarian view. Let's go one by one. If there is an urgency of situation, first, then certainly from the Congress party perspective, there would be an urgency because there are people involved, now very coincidentally, from the Congress party, a member, and someone who's supporting the party, who would be affected by the Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
Now, next is whether hypothetically there can be a situation in the forthcoming state elections. I don't think any ordinance should be passed on the basis of hypothesis. Second is, as Mr. Chacko was pointing out, certainly this is not going to be the last ordinance passed by any government in this country, but during the various sessions, many bills were pending before the standing committee, many things were pending in Parliament. They may have been on economic matters, they may have been on other legislative matters. We haven't seen any ordinances come up for them. So therefore, the government chose to wait for the appropriate forum, which is Parliament. So the question of the government and its timing is definitely going to be questionable and probably challengeable. And that's not a desirable situation. The last point is a political point. Certainly, Mr. Chacko, as the representative of his party and government, can certainly believe that they are doing a completely perfect job in terms of running the country, in terms of Parliament, and the BJP is to blame for everything wrong. But final decision only the people of India can take.
Okay,
none of us can do that.
Right.
So let's leave it to the people of India and history will judge.
Okay, Vinod, you think that the BJP has the stand which it is taking today, it is something which will wash, because what it is saying is that we may have agreed in the all-party meeting, but later
I never said we agreed on an ordinance. I made a clarification on that. There may be an agreement about looking at the larger question. There are two separate issues. I want to clarify. I'm not saying you said it. I never said you said it, Girish. I'm merely clarifying our position. A discussion in an all-party meeting, a consensus can be on a broader issue.
Nalin
It need not be on a specific issue.
No, Nalin Kohli, I am not even saying that you people
I'm not
agree
saying
for
you're
an
saying
ordinance. I am saying that there was an agreement at the all-party meeting that this amendment needs to be brought so that the convicted MLAs and MLCs don't get law.
It may not be exactly as you are framing it.
Okay, whatever it is. Vinod, how do you look at the stand now?
No, one thing which I want to point out is that even when the Rajya Sabha, and after having agreed to all this and after having passed the other to the Representation of People Act, which was about the MPs and MLAs under detention, that they would also not be qualified to contest elections.
Right.
Now, privately, BJP leaders were saying that it would not go down well in popular perception if we pass such legislation back to back, which seems to be, protecting people with questionable antecedents. So the BJP has now got a good excuse to distance itself from the government move while being the eventual beneficiary of it.
Okay.
That's the reality.
Okay.
The second point is that
Quickly,
you said that the governments will fall and all that. No, this ordinance also takes away the right of the members, sitting members, voting rights and their salary rights.
And their salary rights.
Yeah. Till the time they get acquittals, not merely a stay.
Absolutely.
Now, in that limited sense, it is a step ahead of what the Supreme Court decreed.
Absolutely.
Now, the irony is that Congress is not able to make those points. Mr. Chacko has not made that point.
Okay. Well, last words to Mr. Soli. Mr. Sorabjee, can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Mr. Sorabjee, just one point before we wind up. One of the argument is that there is discrimination. Right to appeal cannot be discriminatory. A normal individual convicted has this right to appeal, and it doesn't get affected. How can an MP or elected representative not have the right to appeal and suffer because of that? Do you see this argument? Do you agree with this argument? Do you see any validity in this argument?
No. Apart from that, validity or not, the main question is what I'm worried is if we go on acquiescing in this ordinance making, we will silently and steadily introduce ordinance Raj. That's my point. The question of principle.
But as I pointed out,
one minute, as I said, change the constitution first. Say it is desirable. It is expedient. Constitution as it stands says it is necessary to take immediate action. Now what's done in the past, maybe 2 wrongs don't make a right, 20 wrongs don't make a right. Let's go by some principles, not according to expediency and to favor one political leader or some politicians. That's my point.
Okay.
Ordinance requires immediate necessity for action, and that action must be in the national interest.
Okay. I think on that note we need to end. The fact of the matter is that whenever an ordinance is issued, there is always these kind of discussions. As I pointed out earlier, every government in the past has been using this ordinance power and justifying it. Whether this government will be able to justify it in the eyes of the people is something which we'll have to wait and watch. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Soli, Sorabjee, PC Chacko, Nalin Kohli, Vinod Sharma and Mr. PDT Achary. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, Big Picture, same time tomorrow.